let's talk for a moment about technology in the choice of gauge. How does gauge matter? Just to say, why would you prefer a narrower gauge or a broader gauge? Well, one issue is, or at least was, locomotive size and power. With steam engines, it became very advantageous to have a broader gauge, so you could build a bigger engine on top of that without it becoming too tall and top heavy. Already in the 1830s, locomotive engineers were running up against constraints with the what we now call the standard gauge. Those constraints actually were overcome pretty well. Locomotive designs in the 1840s into up to 1900 or so were able to work within the constraints of that gauge fairly well. But then, actually, at the start of the 20th century, the gauge was found to be a bit constraining. Now, we shifted. Steam locomotives went out in the largely between 1920 or so and 1950 or 60, depending on different parts of the world, and diesel and electric locomotives came in, both of which can put out a lot of power in a much more compact space. So the gauge was no longer really a constraint in the development of powerful locomotives once we switched to diesel and electric, as opposed to steam locomotives. Then the issue of the related issues of stability, speed, and capacity, and that's where this graph comes in, or this drawing, I should say. That if you have a broader gauge, you have a better distribution of forces on the rail. And I'll illustrate that with this vector diagram, to use a technical term, where railway cars are subject to two forces: the force of gravity, which is of course directed down, and lateral forces, which could be centrifugal force around the curve, or it could be come from jostling that happens as the train moves down the track, particularly if the track is uneven. So you combine the forces by essentially, adding together these vectors, and then if you carry the combined force down to the level of the track, what you show here is if you have a narrower gauge, you have pretty much all the force landing on one rail and virtually none of the force on another rail, if you have a narrow gauge. Whereas if you had a broader gauge, then this unequal distribution of forces on the rail is much mitigated. Now it's not a matter of a train tipping over or something if the combined force falls outside the outer, one of the rails. It's actually more that you get derailment happen. The cars will jump over, particularly on a curve or something, jump the rails and derailing going on. You sometimes read about this in the paper if a train is going too fast around a sharp curve or something. Anyway, this is much less likely to happen if the gauge is broader. Actually, derailment tends to happen if the combined force falls, more than how should we put it? More than 2/3 of the way over to one rail. That is to say, if the distance, at the track level between, say, this rail and this rail, if this is more than is less than 1/3 of the total distance, then actually derailment would be likely to happen. In fact, in this case, that would be the case. Even with the broad gauge, this is not really good in practice. But the point is that with a broader gauge, trains can go faster without worrying about uneven distribution of forces on the rail. They could also be loaded with greater. You could also carry heavy loads and have a higher center of gravity without having to worry about this. So those are some of the reasons that broader gauges tend to work better. Now, over the course of the 1800s, a lot of arguments were made in other ways about how one gauge might be more cost effective than another, and a lot of these arguments were actually fallacious. We won't have time to go into this. But some engineers said, well, okay, you can. Arguments were made that you can have higher car capacity relative to the weight of the cars with a broad gauge, and other people said, no, you can do that better with a narrow gauge. Well, a lot of those arguments were simply wrong. It actually depended upon, partly upon the bulking, partly the ratio of weight to volume of a load. If you have a very heavy, dense cargo, like metallic ores, for example, you can carry that with a low center of gravity. You don't have to worry so much, and then narrow gauges can actually work reasonably well. Whereas for a lot of merchandise traffic, you're going to have a high center of gravity because you want to stack things higher and so forth, and then a broader gauge might matter particularly more. And also because for merchandise loads, you might want to carry things at higher speed often. Other arguments were made about, well, okay, can you make cars with more or less rolling friction at one gauge versus another? And actually, different engineers came up with fallacious arguments, and some favoring broad gauges, other arguments favoring narrow gauges. A third issue is track construction and maintenance. The argument was made that you can, for a narrower track bed, you could build it more cheaply than a broader track bed, simply because you have to have less structure beneath the rails and all that. Well, that may be true to a point, but it turns out that particularly for extremely narrow gauges, less than a meter, you have to do a lot more work to keep the track bed well maintained, to keep it from deteriorating with narrow gauges, simply because of the problem that you get more uneven distribution of the loads, and that in itself tends to wear down the track bed more. Some of the reasons that led engineers, say around 1870 to 1880 or so, to build a lot of narrow gauge railways, well, it was found that these railways are just too costly to maintain, so that best practice by around 1900 or so was to not build new narrow gauge railways, except maybe in a few special considerations, such as for mining traffic that would go at low speeds. Track curvature is another issue. The argument was made for a while that with narrow gauge trains could go around sharper curves, and therefore you could build a cheaper railway because you could build winding railways around hills rather than having to build a tunnel through a hill. And there's something to this. I mean, this is one reason why narrow gauges became common in mountains. But engineering opinion changed on this also, so that by the 20th century, engineers generally came to think that, well, no, you can really still use a standard gauge, even if you want to build tracks with high rates of curvature. By the way, railway engineers in the 20th century have, at least those that have thought and written about it, have generally favored broader gauges than 4 foot 8.5. Something, anything from 5'3" to 6 foot, or maybe even more, would probably be better. Although the cost difference is low, apparently something less than 1% of the cost of operating a railroad. Less of a difference than having a better typewriter keyboard, for example. Okay, let's see, I have to think about time considerations, because we started 15 minutes late. I'm not sure when we want to move to Q&A. The original thought was that we would end at 4:10. But I'll plan on going another 20 minutes or so, 20 or maybe 25 minutes. But we want to end this at 4:30. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the specific history. I alluded to some of this briefly before. George Stephenson is the name of the mining engineer, or steam engine mechanic working with mines, who did some of the early experimentation with steam locomotion, as well as track construction. And because he was just a very good intuitive engineer, he didn't have much formal education, but he had a sharp mind for this sort of thing. Anyway, he built the two railways, which together converted railways from narrow mining applications to merchandise traffic and passenger traffic. The first was the Stockton and Darlington Railway in northeastern England, which was still actually mostly a mining But then, although it did carry a bit of merchandise traffic as well, the Liverpool and Manchester Railway was the first railway that was designed for exclusive steam locomotion rather than horses and so forth, as well as the first railway to not to have any mining traffic at all, but all merchandise and passenger traffic. And that opened in 1830. Interestingly enough, there was a rival team of engineers that were planning to use a gauge of 5'6" and if they had in fact been kept working on that railway, one might guess that the entire future history of railways, at least railway track gauge, would have been quite different. But as it was, Stephenson built the line using the gauge of 4'8.5", and that line actually had a profit rate of 10% a year on invested capital, which is extremely high for Britain at that time. So the line got a lot of attention. It became the model of best practice, not only in Britain, but also in continental Europe and the United States, which led the gauge to be used elsewhere. And the fact that Stephenson and his team of engineers built a lot of the early railways in Britain helped to establish that as a standard, particularly because connecting lines, even if they weren't built by Stephenson's crew, would still use the same gauge for the purpose of compatibility. Meanwhile, broad gauge practice emerged in the 1830s to 40s. Two concerns were, first of all, to build large and powerful locomotives. The secondly was how much capacity the trains could carry. Within Britain, there were two local networks that adopted 5'0" and 5'6" as their gauges, but as soon as the Stephenson gauge network expanded to where these railways had been built, they converted, because the value of being able to ship things through on the emerging national network just outweighed any perceived advantages to the broader gauge. However, for Ireland, which of course is separated by sea from Britain, the government held hearings, got the best advice from engineers, and then chose a broader gauge. Thinking, okay, in a new country, we can use a new gauge. Now, the biggest obstacle in Britain to standardization was the 19th century's second great engineer, Isambard Kingdom Brunel. He built the Great Western Railway west from London to, to Bath and Gloucester, and to Devonshire and Cornwall, using the gauge of 7'0", which is about 50% broader. And he figured, okay, with this broader gauge, you can get higher performance in terms of speed, capacity, low friction, and also to control regional traffic by basically requiring all connecting lines to use his main route into London, because they wouldn't be able to, go over the track, the track of other companies which would be using the gauge. This led to the so-called Battle of the Gauges. So there were competitive trials of locomotives and other ways of each side trying to show that its gauge was better. But in the end, Brunel's vision for a broad gauge line didn't work, especially when Great Western Railway Company itself acquired connecting lines using the narrower gauge. This meant that the Great Western Railway had to deal with internal incompatibility within the system, so eventually they converted. Britain also saw a rising interest in narrow gauges in the 1860s for the purpose of building low-cost lines. These efforts didn't amount to much, simply because, what should we say, there weren't enough open spaces within Britain for new narrow gauges to be viable, unlike in North America. Okay, I'll be very quick talking about North America. 1830 to 32, the first railways were built in North America using 4 different gauges, all within a range of 3.5 inches. There was then a broad gauge movement in North America, and then later on a narrow gauge movement in North America, focusing especially on 3.0, in Canada 3'6" inches. Now, how did diversity emerge? Well, a lot of it was lack of vision for an integrated continental network. Rival routes didn't want to connect anyway. So you had Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Charleston, and other cities, each wanting to build westward into the hinterland and get their share of traffic from the hinterland to make their ports the great commercial center. In the end, well, New York was already in the lead because of the Erie Canal. It was really the Erie Canal that made New York the commercial center of the continent, or at least I should say of the country, because this was the first low-cost route to the interior, the Great Lakes and so forth, and enabled New York to pull ahead of Philadelphia and Baltimore and so forth. Now some of these lines, including one line out of New York and the line out of Charleston, well, especially one line out of New York, they chose a broad gauge, 6'0", in order to, again, to try to control the traffic of the region, since that traffic would not be able to go off to use connect to other main lines. When connecting routes were built to connect to these first major trunk routes, they adopted the same gauge as the lines they connected to in order to be able to interchange traffic. Now, okay, so what was the emerging railway map? So you ended up in 9 regions, 9 different common gauge regions. You had 3 different 4'8.5" gauge regions in the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, but they were not connected to each other, and the Midwest. Then you had 4'10" gauge regions in much of New Jersey and then in Ohio. Interestingly enough, in Ohio, the first line built there was sort of, and the engineer who built it was actually thinking ahead. He thought, aha, this railway line, the New York and Erie, which is being planned to cross southern New York State to get to Lake Erie, figured, aha, that line is so close to the 4'10" gauge lines in New Jersey, they're probably going to adopt 4'10" as their gauge. And so I want to build my line to be 4'10" to be able to have a direct connection. Well, that was this line across New York is the one that actually chose 6'0". So you ended up with, New Jersey and Ohio extending into eastern Indiana as well, adopting this sort of odd gauge of 4'10". Meanwhile, the line that expanded from Charleston eventually developed into a network covering much of the eastern South, the 5'0" gauge. There are actually several other short lines that get started using 4'8.5" as a gauge, but none of them developed into a major system. It was the line out of Charleston that expanded into a major regional network, so that determined the gauge of the South. In eastern Canada, the engineers, partly following events in Britain, thought, okay, we'll get a broader gauge and we'll outdo the Americans with low-cost transport into the interior. So it's 5'6", and they also had, since their ports on the Gulf of St. Lawrence would ice up in the winter, they also arranged for a route to Portland, Maine, at that 5'6" gauge, and later in Missouri also, the 5'6" gauge system developed and partly extended southward towards Texas, but didn't get very far until things were converted actually. Then the 6'0" gauge system in southern New York eventually did have a route all the way to Mississippi. And then, as some of you are probably aware, there was a substantial 3'0" gauge network in southwestern Colorado and extending into northern New Mexico and eastern Utah, and so forth, and scattered narrow gauge lines in the rest of the country as well. Okay, so diversity emerged, so that 6 different gauges in common use in at least 9 common gauge regions in the 1870s. But meanwhile, actually starting in the late 1860s, there was a substantial movement to standardize. And the 2 factors driving this were, first of all, growing demand for interregional traffic. For shipping, basically the Erie Canal and other water routes were no longer sufficient to carry all the Midwestern grain that was going to the eastern ports, or the eastern seaboard cities, as well as the ports for shipment to Europe. And railroad companies also developed institutions for cooperation among themselves, which facilitated mutual efforts to standardize. Also, leading companies formed interregional systems. You had the Pennsylvania Railroad, which originally went from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, buying up 3 routes at the Pittsburgh end that led on to Chicago, East St. Louis, and Cincinnati, and then converting the gauge from 4'10" to 4'8.5". Also bought up a number of the companies in northern New Jersey that connected Philadelphia to the New York Harbor area. And then you had the Illinois Central Railroad, first leasing and later buying a route that extended all the way to New Orleans and then converting that route. You had the Great Western Railway of Ontario. Remember that there was the Great Western Railway of Britain, but there was also the Great Western Railway of Ontario linking Niagara to Detroit, and we wanted to basically, they actually provided the first link between the northeastern common, 4'8.5" gauge region and the midwestern region of that gauge with this route here across western Ontario. They have a so-called bandwagon effects. A bandwagon effect is when if one person does something and it gives somebody else an incentive to do the same thing. And in this case one railway line converting gives incentives to other railway lines to convert. So you had a lot of short lines in Ohio, for example, that converted to the 4'8.5" gauge as soon as the Pennsylvania Railroad started using that in the trunk routes. And similarly, in the South, you started to have one of the major line in the western South converted, and another system, the Louisville and Nashville railway system, which